My brother stole my business clients and tried to ruin me, so I built something bigger. Now he's bankrupt and calling me every night to apologize. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and for years, I thought my relationship with my brother, Mark, was built on trust. We were more than just siblings, we were partners in a business we built from the ground up. It all started with nothing but ambition and the belief that we were a perfect team. Mark and I had a dream to create something big, something that would make our family proud. I handled the day-to-day work, the networking, client calls, sales pitches, and marketing, while Mark focused on the big picture. He made the important decisions, while I worked tirelessly, making sure the business stayed afloat. We had the roles, we had the plan, and most importantly, we had each other. Our friends and family saw us as the perfect duo, constantly praising our work ethic and vision. Everyone thought we were unstoppable. It felt like we were on the right path. Everything seemed to be falling into place. But behind closed doors, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Mark started to take a back seat. He was getting lazy, and I could feel it. I was pulling the weight, yet I never said anything. I kept my head down, focused on the work. But as time went on, the cracks in our partnership became harder to ignore. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was relying on me too much, and that resentment was slowly creeping in. Things started with small little moments that I brushed off, thinking they were just growing pains. But soon enough, I began to notice something I couldn't ignore. Mark was taking credit for my work. Clients that I had spent months cultivating were suddenly calling him. He'd show up at meetings with them like he was the one who'd been doing all the heavy lifting, while I was the one working late into the night. 81st. I thought it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe Mark was just getting more confident in his role. But then it started happening more often. I'd bring in a new client, spend hours on calls and emails, and next thing I knew, Mark was the one they were emailing, asking for updates. It was subtle at first, just small things I could let slide. But the more I saw it, the more I realized something wasn't right. I confronted him once. I tried to make it sound casual, asking if he was involved in these deals more than I knew. He shrugged it off, claiming he was just helping and that I shouldn't worry. But the feeling kept growing inside me, like a knot tightening in my chest. I was working harder than ever, and Mark was getting all the praise. To make matters worse, I noticed he was spending less time in the office. When I asked him where he'd been, he'd give vague answers about meetings or big picture plans, but the truth was, he was hardly ever there. And when we met with clients together, he'd act like he was the one carrying the company. The more I noticed it, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that Mark was slowly taking over my hard work, pretending like it was his all along. IT wasn't just about the clients. It was about everything: the partnership, the trust, the way he was starting to act like he was the one doing all the hard work. That's when I realized that things between us weren't just strained. They were changing in ways I didn't want to face. The first signs of betrayal were there, but I still couldn't fully accept them. It was a Friday afternoon when I first found out the truth. I had just wrapped up a meeting with a potential client when I got a call from one of my biggest accounts, someone I had worked tirelessly to bring on board. When I answered, I could barely make sense of what they were saying. "Your brother reached out to us yesterday," they said. "We've decided to go with his proposal instead of yours." I froze. I tried to act calm, asking questions, but inside, I was unraveling. I thought maybe there was some mistake. But then another call came, and then another. Mark had been going behind my back, reaching out to clients I had built relationships with and offering them better deals. Worse, he was telling them that I was holding back on them, making it sound like I was the one dragging the business down. The betrayal stung more than I could have imagined. These weren't just clients, they were people I'd spent hours, days, months nurturing. I had worked my ass off for them. And Mark, my brother, the one I trusted above everyone, was stealing them from under my nose. The worst part, I found out that this wasn't the first time. Mark had been doing this for months, behind my back, with no remorse. He hadn't just been poaching clients, he was sabotaging me, tearing down everything I'd worked so hard to build. The feeling of betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I could hardly breathe. I tried to confront him. I called him right after the last client dropped the bomb on me. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Maybe they're just looking for something different. You can't expect people to stay loyal forever." But I knew he was lying. He was too busy playing the victim, making it seem like I was the one to blame for everything that had gone wrong. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about our partnership shattered. Mark wasn't just my brother anymore. He was someone who would stop at nothing to get ahead, even if it meant destroying me in the process. After the confrontation, everything felt like it was unraveling. Mark's betrayal wasn't just about lost clients, it was about everything he had torn down between us. I tried to salvage what I could. I spoke to the clients, but the damage had already been done. Mark had poisoned the well, and now they were questioning my credibility. I couldn't believe it. My brother, the person I trusted most in the world, had shattered everything we had built together. He'd gone behind my back, destroyed my reputation, and tried to steal the very thing I had worked my whole life for. I felt like a fool. How could I have been so blind? But the pain of betrayal was nothing compared to the fear that gnawed at me, the fear that I was going to lose everything. The business I had poured my soul into was now teetering on the edge. Clients were leaving, and it felt like no matter what I did, the walls were closing in. It would have been so easy to quit, to let the loss consume me and walk away. But deep down, I knew I couldn't do that. I had one choice. I could give up and let Mark win, or I could fight harder than I ever had before. That's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to let him destroy me. I would rebuild. But this time, I would do it alone. I had to move on. I couldn't keep working with someone who would betray me like this. Mark had made his choices, and I had to make mine. I was going to build something bigger, something better, without him. And when it was all said and done, I was going to prove that I didn't need him or anyone else to succeed. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my business, and my future. I was going to take control again. Starting over wasn't easy. I had nothing but the anger burning in my chest and the stubborn determination to prove that I didn't need Mark. No more safety nets. No more relying on anyone else. I was going to make this work on my own, even if it meant starting from scratch. I picked up side jobs, took whatever work I could find, and spent every waking hour focusing on building my new business. It wasn't glamorous. I worked nights, weekends, any free time I had. But with each project I completed, with each satisfied client, I could feel the momentum building. I was starting to carve my own path, and it felt damn good. Mark, of course, didn't disappear. He kept calling, texting, showing up uninvited to check in. He apologized for what he did, saying he was sorry and that he was still family. He told me he wanted to make amends, but I knew it was nothing but empty words. He was trying to win me back, not because he truly regretted what he did, but because he saw me starting to succeed without him. But I ignored him. I wasn't going to fall for it. The more he called, the more determined I became to prove him wrong. Slowly, I began to gain new clients, people who were willing to trust me despite the past. I worked harder than ever to earn their loyalty, and it paid off. One day, I landed a contract that felt like a turning point. It was a client I knew Mark had tried to steal from me months ago, a client he had promised would join his side. When I got that signed deal, it hit me. I was building something bigger, something Mark couldn't touch. It wasn't just about the money or the clients. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I was starting to realize that this could actually work. I could actually make it on my own, and just like that, I had my first small victory. The first taste of what it felt like to rise above the betrayal. But this was only the beginning. Mark had no idea what was coming next. Business was booming, and I had started making a name for myself. The clients were rolling in, the contracts were stacking up, and I was feeling unstoppable. For the first time since Mark's betrayal, I was starting to feel like I was in control of my own destiny. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about proving to myself that I could do this without him. But then, one night, Mark called. I didn't recognize the number at first, but when I picked up, I knew it was him. His voice was different, quiet, almost apologetic. "I know I've messed up," he said, his words coming slowly. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I need to say I'm sorry. I never should have done that to you." At first, I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to hang up, to ignore him, but another part of me was surprised. He sounded sincere, and hearing his voice, after everything, made something inside me snap. He wasn't just asking for forgiveness. He was admitting to the damage he'd caused, the betrayal he'd orchestrated. He told me that he had acted out of his own insecurities, that he couldn't stand seeing me succeed while he felt stuck. I listened as he confessed his jealousy, his fear of not being enough. It was hard to hear, but a part of me also understood. He wasn't just a greedy businessman trying to take what wasn't his. He was a man desperate to prove he was worth something, even if it meant destroying me to do it. But as the words sank in, I realized something else. His apology didn't change what he'd done. He had taken something from me that I couldn't get back. And even though he was admitting his wrongs, it didn't undo the hurt. It didn't undo the trust he had shattered. What Mark didn't realize was that his apology didn't fix anything. In fact, it made me realize just how far gone our relationship really was. I had spent so much time trying to rebuild, trying to succeed for the sake of proving him wrong. But now, I understood. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about freeing myself from the damage he had caused and moving forward without him. But still, a small part of me couldn't ignore the pain I felt. Was it even possible to forgive him for everything he had done? Mark's business was crumbling. The empire he'd tried to build on the back of stolen clients had collapsed, and with it, his confidence. He reached out to me more frequently, his tone shifting from the arrogant voice I had once known to a broken plea for help. His calls became constant, relentless. Each time, he begged for my forgiveness, admitting how badly he had messed up. At first, I ignored him. I didn't want to hear it. He'd ruined everything for me, my career, my trust, my family. He was still trying to make it sound like it was all a misunderstanding, but I knew better. He betrayed me, and no amount of apologies could undo that. But as the days passed, something shifted inside me. I was thriving, my business was growing. I was gaining clients left and right, and I had proven to myself that I could do this without him. And yet, with every call he made, with every desperate message he sent, I felt the anger start to fade. The resentment was still there, but it was slowly being replaced by something else, a sense of emptiness. I had everything I wanted: success, independence, respect, but it didn't feel like enough. The victories didn't feel as sweet with Mark still on my mind, his voice echoing in my head. Every apology, every tearful phone call made me wonder, was I holding onto the pain too tightly? That's when the guilt hit. I had achieved everything I wanted, but at what cost? I had destroyed my relationship with my brother, torn apart my family, and I wasn't sure I had the emotional closure I needed. I could feel myself slipping into a dark place. Could I live with the weight of my success if it meant leaving my brother in the dust? Could I be content with revenge if it meant knowing he was suffering too? I thought I wanted this victory, freedom, independence, but now I wasn't so sure. The anger was fading, but what replaced it didn't feel like peace. It felt like uncertainty. I was at a crossroads. I had won, but I wasn't sure how much I had truly healed. Did I need Mark to heal, or was I still holding on to the wreckage of what we once had? After weeks of phone calls, messages, and unanswered texts, I finally agreed to meet Mark face to face. The decision wasn't easy. Part of me wanted to shut him out forever, to never see him again. But another part of me knew that I couldn't move on until I had this conversation. It was the only way I could truly close the door on everything he'd taken from me. The meeting took place in a small coffee shop. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation I had imagined for so long. No yelling, no throwing accusations. Instead, there was a quiet tension in the air, a heavy silence between us. He sat across from me, looking smaller than I remembered, broken, defeated. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never should have done it. I never should have taken your clients, your trust, your business." His apology felt hollow at first, but I could see the fear in his eyes, the vulnerability I'd never seen in him before. For the first time, I felt like I was looking at my brother, human, flawed, and scared. I didn't know how to feel about it. "You've destroyed everything, Mark," I told him. My voice was steady, but the anger still burned inside me. "You took away my clients, my reputation, my trust. I gave you everything I had, and you threw it all away like it was nothing." Mark didn't interrupt. He just listened, taking the words in as they came. For once, he wasn't defending himself. He wasn't trying to make excuses. He was just there, and for the first time, I realized something. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need him to say anything to make it better. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. It was about reclaiming what he had taken from me. And as much as I hated what he did, as much as I wanted to see him suffer for it, I realized that the only way I could truly heal was by letting go of the anger. "I've rebuilt, Mark," I told him, my voice softening just a little. I've done everything you said I couldn't, and I'm better off without you. But that doesn't mean I don't hurt. It doesn't mean I'm not angry.
But I'm moving on. Mark nodded, his eyes welling up.
I know, I get it, and I don't expect you to forgive me. But I am sorry. The meeting ended with nothing more than a quiet handshake, no grand gestures, no big conclusions. But as I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt something I hadn't in months. Closure for the first time. I wasn't just holding on to the past. I was letting it go.
I didn't need revenge anymore. I just needed to move forward.
And that's exactly what I was going to do. After the confrontation, life seemed to fall into a quiet rhythm. Mark's business was officially bankrupt, and I was finally starting to see the fruits of my labor. The clients I had worked so hard to regain were sticking with me, and I had built a reputation for myself, one that didn't rely on anyone else.
For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace.
I was doing it on my own, and I was proud of what I had accomplished.
But that peace didn't last long. Mark started showing up at my office.
At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Maybe he was in the area.
Maybe he just needed to talk. But then it happened again.
And again. Every time he showed up, he had the same line. I've been thinking about what you said. I want to make things right.
I want to help with the business. I could feel the anger rising again. But this time, it wasn't just about betrayal.
This time, it was about control.
He didn't get to waltz back into my life, pretending like everything was fine.
The audacity of him after everything he had done, after ruining me. He thought he could just walk in and take credit for my success. The worst part,
he wasn't even trying to hide it.
He started acting like I owed him something.
He'd compliment
my business, telling me how impressive it was that I had rebuilt so quickly, like he had a hand in it.
He even started showing up at events where I was speaking, trying to insert himself into conversations as though he was part of my success. It made my blood boil.
The betrayal, the lies, the stealing, it wasn't enough. Now he was trying to take credit for something he didn't earn. And he thought I would let him. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was disgusted.
I had worked so hard to build something from the ground up, to prove that I didn't need him. And now he was trying to erase all of that by inserting himself back into my story.
I knew I had to do something.
I couldn't let him think he could walk back into my life like nothing happened.
But this time, I wasn't going to confront him like I had before. No, this time, I was going to show him once and for all that I didn't need him. But how? How could I finally put an end to this? For good, he knew the time had come to finally put an end to Mark's interference.
He had crossed every boundary, and now he was pushing me to the edge. The nerve of him, showing up at my events, taking credit for my hard work, acting like nothing ever happened, like he wasn't the one who nearly destroyed me.
I was done. I wasn't going to confront him again. Words wouldn't fix this.
No, this time I was going to do something far more effective.
I was going to expose him once and for all. I'd gathered enough evidence over the last few months to make sure that everyone would see Mark for who he truly was.
I had emails, contracts, messages from clients where he'd been directly poaching my accounts.
The lies, the deceit, it was all there, waiting to be revealed. I sent everything to our shared contacts, everyone who had ever been involved in the business, everyone who knew both of us. I didn't want them to hear it from me directly. I wanted them to see it with their own eyes. The truth was undeniable.
Mark had taken from me, lied to me, and tried to tear me down, and now it was all exposed. The fallout was swift. Within days, I started hearing about Mark's reputation unraveling. Clients who had once been loyal to him were distancing themselves, refusing to return his calls.
Business associates who had supported him in the past were turning their backs, realizing they had been fooled by his charm and manipulation. It
didn't take long before everyone saw him for what he really was, a fraud.
I didn't feel any satisfaction in watching him fall. I didn't want to see him suffer, but it wasn't about that.
It was about ensuring that he couldn't come back and take what wasn't his again. It was about making sure that he understood the consequences of his actions, that he couldn't walk through life thinking he could ruin people without paying the price. As I watched everything unfold,
something strange happened. I felt a sense of peace.
Mark had tried to ruin me, but in the end, he had only exposed himself. His downfall was his own doing, and I had nothing left to prove.
My business was thriving, and my reputation was intact. For the first time, I realized something I had already won, not through revenge, but through resilience.
Mark might have tried to tear me down, but I had built something that was untouchable. And no matter how hard he tried to tear it apart, he couldn't take away what was mine. Mark's calls didn't stop. At first, they were just more of the same. Frantic, desperate pleas for forgiveness, followed by empty promises to change. But then, something shifted in his voice. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't trying to manipulate or control me.
There was a quiet sorrow there, a humility that I hadn't heard before. He called one evening, and this time, I picked up. "I know I've messed up," Mark said, his voice shaky.
"I don't even know how to fix what I've done, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've lost everything."
"I see now how much I've hurt you, and I wish I could take it all back." There was no pleading this time.
No excuses.
Just regret.
For the first time in a long time, I felt something shift inside me. I realized that Mark wasn't just apologizing because he wanted something from me. He wasn't asking for my help or forgiveness so he could get back into my life.
He was just sorry, and that was it. But I couldn't deny the truth. I wasn't sure if I could forgive him. Not yet. Not after everything. "I can't help you anymore," I told him, my voice calm but firm. "What you did, it hurt too much."
And I've already moved on. I've built something of my own. But that doesn't mean I don't care about what happened.
It doesn't mean I want to see you fail.
I just can't go back to what we were.
"I've already healed without you." Mark didn't say anything for a moment. I could hear him taking deep breaths, probably trying to compose himself. "I get it," he finally whispered.
I never deserved your forgiveness. I just needed you to know how sorry I am. I wish things had been different. I've learned my lesson, and I hope you can find peace, even if it's without me. It wasn't a grand reconciliation.
It wasn't a Hollywood ending.
It was just two people, acknowledging the hurt and the truth, and moving on from it.
I wasn't ready to forgive him, not in the way he might have wanted, but I was ready to let go of the anger.
I realized that holding on to it would only keep me chained to the past, to the very thing that had held me back for so long. I didn't need to save him. I didn't need to fix him.
All I needed to do was heal.
And that's exactly what I was doing. Mark's calls didn't stop, but they became more desperate.
The messages shifted from apologies to pleas for help. He was struggling, lost, and he couldn't figure out how to rebuild.
He wanted a job, a second chance, a place in my life again. His voice was raw, and there was a certain desperation in it that I hadn't heard before.
But this time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity either.
I felt something else, something I couldn't quite name. He asked for help rebuilding his business, asked me to mentor him, to help him get back on his feet. He said he'd learned his lesson, that he was finally ready to work hard and earn back his trust.
But what he didn't realize was that I had already moved on. His failure wasn't mine to fix.
The trust he had broken couldn't be rebuilt on my terms, it had to be rebuilt on his. I realized then that the man who had once been my partner wasn't the same person anymore. He was a man who had lost everything, and now he was looking to me, the very person he'd betrayed, to lift him up.
But I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't a guy who would bend over backward to help someone who had broken me.
Not anymore. I've built something I'm proud of, I told him, my voice firm. And I did it on my own.
You had your chance, Mark.
But you're not part of my story anymore.
You need to build something for yourself. Don't rely on me to fix what you've broken.
I can't do that for you. There was silence on the other end of the line.
I could hear him breathing, but he didn't say anything.
I knew he wanted me to offer a lifeline, to give him a way back into my life.
But I couldn't. Not after everything. I hung up, feeling a strange sense of finality. This was it. There would be no going back. Mark was still calling, still trying to re-enter my life. But I was done answering. The truth was, I had already built something greater than what we ever had together.
His desperation to reconnect only reminded me of how far I had come. I didn't need him, and I didn't need to keep reliving the past. My future was mine to shape, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially him, hold me back. Mark was still calling, still sending messages. But this time, I didn't care anymore.
I had no more room for him in my life. The past was behind me, and I was moving forward.